I always loved my reflection. It was my obsession, my proof of perfection. Mirrors followed me wherever I went, as essential as the air I breathed. My friends called me Chloe, short, casual, fitting for someone as flawless as I believed myself to be. My real name was Chloe, but even that didn't feel good enough for the girl in the mirror. At 15, I had a routine. Every night, I admired myself, basking in my beauty as though it were a masterpiece to be studied. That night was no different. I stood before my full-length mirror, turning side to side, marveling at my new outfit, a soft baby pink shirt, light blue skinny jeans, and a dainty silver necklace that glimmered just enough to draw attention. I stared into the glass, my gaze fixed on my perfect twin staring back. Then, something changed. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. My heart skipped a beat as a shadow, a figure, crept behind me. The strange part? It didn't appear in the mirror. I screamed. Loud. Panicked. But the thing only laughed, a deep, hollow sound that sent chills racing down my spine. I spun around, my chest heaving, and there it was, standing directly in front of me. It wasn't just a shadow. It was solid now, impossibly real, but its features were blurred, undefined, as if it were something halfway between existence and nothingness. I froze, paralyzed with terror, as it walked past me. But it didn't leave. No. It stepped toward the mirror. I watched in wide-eyed horror as it approached my reflection. And then, it took it. I don't know how else to describe what I saw. The thing reached out to the glass, its shapeless hands distorting the surface like ripples in water. My reflection trembled, fighting to stay with me, but it couldn't. The figure pulled my reflection into itself like slipping into a second skin. Then it turned around, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. It was me. Every detail, every inch of the thing now perfectly mirrored my own appearance. But it wasn't just a copy. Its eyes glowed faintly, wrong somehow, and its lips curled into a twisted, unsettling smile. I wanted to scream, to move, but I couldn't. My fear anchored me in place as it stepped closer. Then it spoke. Its voice was mine, but warped, a darker, crueler version of my own. "That's what happens when you stare at your reflection too much, dear," it said, mockingly sweet. "Now, you'll never be able to again." With those final words, it vanished. I turned back to my mirror, trembling, desperate to see myself, to prove it was all a nightmare. But my reflection, it was gone. I darted to every mirror in my room, frantically checking each one. Nothing. No image stared back at me from the glass. My reflection had vanished entirely, stolen, erased. I tried to continue living normally, but how could I? My fear consumed me. What if someone noticed? What if someone realized that I, Chloe, no longer had a reflection? I became a prisoner in my own home, hiding from the world, avoiding mirrors like they were cursed. And still, the thought haunts me. What if Chloe, the other Chloe, sees your reflection next? Would she take it too? Be careful. You never know what's staring back at you from the other side. This is a story that a former colleague shared with me. It happened on the roads in an urban area. Back then, the area was still quite rural. As usual with this story, I will use the word "I" to make it easier to convey the content. After my roommate and I returned from a trip to a flea market in Bangkok, hunger began to set in, even though I didn't feel anything while walking earlier. It was already midnight, and finding food was quite difficult since the surroundings were still filled with dense trees, few houses, and streetlights that were sparse. Occasionally, a few cars or motorcycles would pass by. I hesitated a lot about whether to leave the dorm to find something to eat, as the atmosphere around us was quite frightening. But hunger doesn't spare anyone. After making up my mind, my roommate and I got on the motorcycle and headed to a late-night eatery called Midnight Rice Porridge, which was about 9 kilometers away. The road was pitch dark and deserted. Only our motorcycle was moving on the road, with no other people around and no streetlights. The only light was from the bike's headlights. The cold wind blew through, making me shiver. During the entire journey, we didn't speak, as the wind and the noise of the motorcycle drowned out any conversation, adding to the eerie atmosphere. When we had traveled halfway, the dim light from a few large dormitory buildings gradually appeared. This area used to be empty land, with no one living there. The U-shaped turn in front of the dorm was the site of many serious accidents. I always felt uneasy whenever I passed through here. We continued to move slowly through the curve. Suddenly, I felt a cold breeze run down my spine for no apparent reason. As soon as we passed that spot, I felt a bit relieved, until my friend did something strange. He turned his head to look behind us. Not just once, but again, as if he were checking something. This made me turn around as well, anxiety building up in my chest. But all I saw was another motorcycle coming from the opposite direction, and there was nothing unusual, yet I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling. "Hey, look at the road. You're going to crash," I immediately warned. "Did you see something?" my friend asked, his voice trembling with fear. "Don't stop. Keep riding, we'll talk about it later," I quickly said when I saw him start to pull over. "But did you see anything just now?" He asked the same question again, his voice growing more tense. "Stop asking. We'll talk about it later," I snapped, wanting him to focus on driving. We continued in tense silence until we reached the brightly lit midnight rice porridge, which was more crowded. I tried to reassure my friend, but the fear was still clearly visible on his face. "When we passed the U-turn, did you see anything?" he asked again, with a heavy gaze. "Did you see something? If you did, tell me now," I pressed him. "Did you see the motorcycle going the opposite way?" he began to reveal. "Yes, I saw it." "So what?" I replied, anxiety creeping in. "Then did you see the person sitting behind?" His voice trembled more than ever. "Why? If you saw something, just tell me," I responded, full of worry. "I saw an old man, so frail that he was just skin and bones. He was only wearing shorts and hunched over, his head was almost touching the back of the seat, looking like a corpse." His voice dropped lower, as if he feared anyone might overhear. I fell silent, my heart raced as I listened to the horrifying story from my friend. "You didn't see him?" "No, I didn't," I replied, though the shiver down my spine was undeniable. We had dinner in silence, neither of us in the mood to talk. The return trip was truly haunting, with terrifying images lingering in our minds. Although we were fortunate to escape danger, we still felt anxious whenever we thought about the desolate road we would have to face again. Ashley was home alone for the first time. At first, the thought excited her, no annoying little brother to bother her, no parents to nag her. She imagined the freedom would be exhilarating. Yet, as the silence of the house settled over her, an unease crept in. A faint chill ran through her spine, not from the air but from the weight of being truly alone. Ashley had always harbored a peculiar fear, the spaces beneath. Beneath her bed, beneath the counters, beneath the couch, those shadowy voids felt alive to her, places where something could hide. She could almost feel the phantom tug of claws reaching out, just waiting for her guard to drop. To distract herself, Ashley decided to read. She picked up her phone and opened Wattpad, scrolling through random stories until she found one without paying much attention to its title. She told herself the engrossing world of fiction would drown out her irrational fears. For a while, it worked. Minutes passed, and Ashley was lost in the story. Then, a sudden noise shattered the fragile cocoon of her focus. A soft clattering sound, faint but deliberate, came from the kitchen. Her heart skipped a beat. She froze, listening intently. The sound didn't come again. Mustering courage, she slid off her bed and tiptoed toward the kitchen, her phone clutched tightly in her hand like a makeshift weapon. "Hello?" she called out softly, her voice trembling. Silence greeted her. Ashley scanned the room, her eyes darting over the countertops, the cabinets, and the empty sink. Nothing seemed out of place. She let out a nervous laugh, scolding herself for being so jumpy. But as she turned to leave, her gaze fell on the cupboard beneath the sink. That fear returned, gnawing at her resolve. The space beneath the sink seemed darker than it should have been, the shadows within almost tangible. She hesitated, but curiosity, or perhaps an urge to confront her fear, drove her forward. Slowly, she crouched down and opened the cupboard door. At first, there was only blackness. Then, two piercing yellow eyes stared back at her from the darkness, glowing with a malevolent light. Ashley gasped, stumbling backward and landing hard on the cold kitchen floor. Her breath came in shallow, ragged bursts as her mind raced to process what she had just seen. Suddenly, the eyes were everywhere. She saw them peering at her from the corners of the room, beneath the kitchen table, behind the refrigerator. Crimson and yellow, watching her, unblinking, from every shadow. The air grew thick with a suffocating dread as she felt their gaze boring into her, consuming her. Panic overtook her. She scrambled to her feet, fumbling with her phone to call her parents. "Please, come home," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "There's something here. Please, hurry." Her parents rushed home, but when they arrived, they found only silence. Ashley lay lifeless in the center of the living room, her body sprawled in a pool of blood. Deep claw marks marred the walls and furniture, tearing through the house in chaotic patterns. Every space beneath, the couch, the cabinets, the bed. The yellow eyes were gone, but their presence lingered, etched into the silence of the house. From that day forward, no one could explain what had happened to Ashley, but the marks remained, a chilling testament to the terror